Okay, Mr. Mayor, we are now live. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Chair,
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Approval of the agenda. Is there any add-ons to our agenda here today? Seeing none, do I have someone to move the agenda approval, please? Moved by Councilor Pringle, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Declaration after hearing your interest, you can clear any time you see fit during the meeting. We're now down to our public hearings. I will now call this public meeting to order. This meeting is to consider public comments regarding the proposed renaming of Wilson Drive and Lakeshore Road to Sunset Boulevard. Will the clerk please advise those present as to the method by which the notice of this meeting was given? Brittany?
further to the requirements of Township Notice Procedures Bylaw 93/2007 and the Municipal Act 2001, notice of this proposed renaming and public meeting was circulated by ordinary mail to property owners on August 12, 2020.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. In attendance is Township Director of Operations Tyler Yonke, Interim CEO Cassandra Rocca, additionally Scott Taylor, Senior Planner, and Carolyn Daly, Planning Technician with the County Grade, are also in attendance. I will first call upon Director of Operations Tyler Yonke to submit any comments. Tyler?
Thank you, Mayor Burley. This report is based on previous report of PL 15135 that was brought to Council from the Transportation Committee in August of 2015. This report outlines two options for street renaming of Wilson Drive, Sunset Boulevard and Lakeshore Road. The Transportation Committee has directed staff to standardize all the roads to be named Sunset Boulevard. Since then, a report OPS 2020-31 was brought to Council August 5th, 2020 to stipulate notice for this public meeting.
Thank you, Tyler. Do the county representatives wish to submit any comments? I believe we have Scott and Carolyn. Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Burley and members of Township Council and everyone else listening. County staff don't have anything at this time. We're simply here to answer any questions. I can speak to any matters from a county planning perspective, and Carolyn Bailey, who's our planning technician and civic addressing coordinator, can speak to any questions from a technical civic addressing perspective. So we're really here just to answer any questions that council may have in that regard.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for your comments. I will now invite members of the public to submit their comments. Only those that have pre-registered with the clerk will be provided the opportunity to speak to the proposed renaming. The clerk will invite you to submit your comments by calling upon you by name. Prior to submitting your comments, please indicate your name and address for the record. I encourage only speakers to provide their comments to a concise manner, as each speaker will be provided 5 minutes to make their comments. I'll now turn it over to our clerk, Brittany, call upon first attendee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Prior to calling upon our first speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to remind our speakers to please keep their microphones muted when they are not speaking. If you do not have your device muted, we will mute it for you. Further to the instructions provided to you upon registration for this meeting, to unmute yourself, please select the microphone icon found on your Teams home screen by hovering your mouse over your screen. Committee can both hear and see you in council chambers. Therefore, we encourage all participants to enable their video feeds where connectivity will allow. If you are participating by teleconference, please select *6 to unmute yourself. Each speaker will be provided 5 minutes to submit their comments. We respectfully ask that speakers do not interrupt their peers and only speak when they are invited to do so. If you wish to submit a comment in response to council or staff in relation to your comments, please raise your virtual hand by selecting the hand icon on your Teams home screen. Participants will be called upon in the order of their registration, with the first registrant being invited to speak first, and etc. Additionally, I would like to draw both the committee's and the public's attention to the submitted written comments as included in the agenda package. As per their request, Evelyn and George Goodfellow of 137 Sunset Boulevard have asked that their opposition to the proposed renaming of Wilson Drive and Lakeshore Road be noted for the record. To begin, I will now invite Sandra Leckie-Reed, speaking in opposition to the proposed name change, participating via video conference. Ms. Leckie-Reed, please go ahead.
What happened?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, we can, Sandra.
Okay. I have a few comments to make. See, why is it doing that?
Sandra, we can both see and hear you. Sandra, you have muted yourself. Okay, now you're good. Don't hit it again.
Okay. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So my first comment is, I have multiple sclerosis and I get medication delivered to me. If you change the name of the street, it's going to take time for the new street name to come up on GPS. I get my medication sometimes mailed by regular mail, sometimes by UPS, sometimes by Purolator. This can cause a major hardship for me if I cannot get my medications on time. Another point that I have is there's many streets in Ontario that have more than one name, like main streets. For instance, just for an example, in Cambridge, King Street changes to Coronation Boulevard, which changes to Dundas. That's all a major street in Cambridge, and it's been that way for years. The new subdivision, I think, should be, the name of Sunset should be kept for that, leaving Wilson Drive alone, because people are accessing the new subdivision from Galloway. And if Wilson is changed to Sunset, they're going to be, before everything's sold and the road is finished, people are going to be trying to enter from Lake Road, and they'll have to come down our way and turn around and go back up and then go down to Galloway to enter. So I think that can be a major problem. Also, we've been here for years. Many of us have been here for years. In order for us to change everything, we have to go to lawyers to change our deeds. If we have mortgages, that has to be changed by a lawyer. The price of all this is a hardship to some people. I don't understand why, while COVID is going on, people have lost their jobs, and it's very difficult for them to pay normal bills. And now you're asking them to go to a lawyer to change a deed. That I don't understand why we have to submit to this change, where the new subdivision can be called whatever it wants. Nobody has bought it yet. They have to register when the buying goes through. So I think that's a hardship for a lot of people, and I'd like to know who's going to be paying for all that. And it's not been our choice, so why should we have to? Also, we have submitted a lot of correspondence, just our subdivision alone, and we've given lots of reasons why our street shouldn't be changed, and you've only given us maybe 1 or 2 reasons why it should be changed. So if there's no legal reason why our street name should be changed, and you decide to change it anyways, there's something wrong with the system. Like the Sunset goes down past the new subdivision, and even they have to make changes because Their street name will stay the same, but you want to change their street numbers. So for them to do that, they also have to change their deeds and their mortgages and everything else that goes with it.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Sandra. Our next speaker will be Kim West.
Go ahead, Kim.
Thank you. Kim West, 135, 141 Sunset Boulevard, Georgian Bluffs, Ontario. Thank you to Georgian Bluffs Council, Mayor, and my fellow landowners for the opportunity to share our concerns. From the articles attached with today's agenda, there was report number PL15.35 dated August the 27th, 2015. If I can reference down on the recommendations, 1D said Sunset Boulevard, 30 addresses to change numbers to 400, and road name stays the same. Now, I was not able to go through all of the attachments. However, that would indicate to me that the area that I live on, my number of my residents would be changing to 400. In the 2 letters that I received on August the 12th from the Township of Georgian Bluffs, my proposed new addresses were from 135 Sunset Boulevard to 335 Sunset Boulevard, and from 141 Sunset Boulevard to 341 Sunset Boulevard. I was unable to find in the information provided where that change is now going to be 300 as opposed to the report number PL1535 that said that we were going to the 400. So would you like to answer that now, or would you want me to continue on with my concerns?
Maybe continue on, Kim, with your address your concerns first, please.
Okay, thank you. This is the 3rd time since we've owned these properties that we have been subjected to an address change. And it is a very large inconvenience to all land and homeowners. The loss of important mail and documentation is critical to all people. And the cost incurred by the homeowner to do the address change for Canada Post is only for a certain time period, for our mailboxes to be changed, and for new mailing labels. I find this a large inconvenience. Having said that, I am in support of the change due to the importance of EMS and the continuity of people being able to receive the best medical attention possible. So I would like to suggest that as a solution that each landowner be given a $150 credit on their first tax installment of 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Would any staff member be able to answer Kim's first question about that report? Tyler, are you able to answer that?
No, not at this time, Mr. Mayor. I've just reached out to Mr. Anderson. He's currently running our IT system, and he is the one who wrote this report. If I can delay it just till the end of this, and hopefully you're back here.
Kim, we will get back to you with an answer here shortly.
One address change would be drastic, but if this report is correct, it looks like we may have to have 2, which would be totally unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Oh, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. I think where Kim's comments come from, if you go back to the original report written from Transportation Department in 2015, it suggests a different numbering sequence. than what is suggested in the latest report that's issued. So I think that's where the confusion is, and I think the suggested is the newest report, not going back to that older report.
Do we then have a copy of that newer report?
Brittany?
Yes, Brian's report was included in the agenda. The numbering is OPS 2020-31.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Brittany?
Okay, and our next submission will be from Caroline Hamill. I believe she was joining with the Lecky Reeves.
Go ahead, Caroline.
Miss Lecky Reed, if Caroline is not with you, she's not on the line. So if she's not with you, just shake your head for me and we'll move on to the next
Can you
submission.
hear me? I am here.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Caroline, you're with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm opposed to changing the addresses as well. I've lived here for 47 years, and in that time, I've changed my address 3 times here. So I think it's time that we just leave things alone. And why can that new subdivision why can they not just adopt that name of that subdivision and leave ours alone? Because to me, it's, and there is a bit of history here for Wilson Drive as it is. Because when we first came here 47 years ago, there was people on here that the street was named after them. So that's been in here for a long, long time. So and I just don't think it's fair. And again, too, it's the money part too, that because everything is going to cost big dollars to have everything changed over. And I'm against changing my address again.
Thank you, Caroline, for your comments.
Our next commenter will be Sally Ann and Bruce Lecky.
Good afternoon.
Go ahead, Sally.
I guess our admission is similar to everybody else's, that we do not want to incur the cost of having to change our address again. And also, I too also have medication delivered as my sister-in-law, Sandra Lecky. So it would cause me some issues as well of getting my medications on time. And mine come either through mail or by Purilators. So it's just that unfamiliarity of them trying to find my new address as well. But both my husband and I, we were more concerned about the costs incurred. There's many seniors that live in both subdivisions, and sometimes that, and I'm sure that will be an added cost for us and for everybody else as well. And I concur with Mrs. Hamill that this original subdivision was Mr. Wilson's, and they were kindly enough to name the subdivision after him and our street name, not the subdivision, but the street name Wilson Avenue, which I think bodes well with some history of our own subdivision. And I think it would encourage a bad faith that we would rename it after we did, as this was his original farm. And I just would like to add that to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next commenter will be Lena Gomes.
Go ahead, Lena.
Good. Hi, how are you? Thank you, Council, for allowing us to speak here today. So I 100% concur with all those who have spoken thus far in opposition of the address change. I am, in comparison, fairly new to the area. I've only been a property owner for about 5 years or so, but I am very familiar. I do work in the municipal realm and have worked with civic addressing and with planning departments. And I do understand that there was signatures gathered of all property owners. And for the municipalities that I've worked with in the past, if there's 80% or more either for or opposed to a change, that normally we go with the residents and we go with that 80% ruling. So I don't know what that is for Georgian Bluffs, but I'm hoping it is the same because we have 100% in opposition for this change. What I was a little bit confused with the recent request is that I'm very familiar with the EMS requirements and the 911 civic addressing requirements, and we're currently in full compliance of that, right? So for 911, civic address needs to be unique with property number, road name, and municipality. We are in compliance of that as we are today. So with Wilson Drive, Sunset Boulevard, and Lakeshore Road, we have a clear divide. There's no duplication of address numbers. EMS would have no problem, and they currently have no problem finding us. They are able to geocode to the location and get to us with no complications. So I found that a little bit hard to read, really, because that is not a fact that it would pose a problem for EMS, because it currently does not. So my recommendation, as it is for some, would be to keep Wilson Drive as is, Sunset Boulevard as is, Lakeshore Road as is. And to me, it makes the most sense is just to extend Wilson Drive right to Galloway through the new subdivision. All you have to do is add a few more addresses along that address range, and it would still be in compliance for EMS. So that's really all I wanted to add to everybody else's comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, our next commenters will be Marge and Jerry Beaver.
Go ahead, Art.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Marge and Jerry Beaver, we have two properties, 109 and 116 Wilson. Both agree with all the comments we've heard up to this point, going back to the historical significance of Wilson. Again, Wilson was named after the original farm owner that the land was purchased from. I don't think we should negate historical value of streets in order to accommodate newer streets that have no historical value to them. Coming down the road to our subdivision, or getting closer, there's a sign, Northbourne Park Subdivision. That shows the uniqueness of our subdivision down here. It's totally off on its own, and I think everyone here wants to keep it as its unique entity that it is. Saying that, previously, years ago, when Bolter Estates first started coming up with the subdivision idea at those meetings, and it was in no way against the Bolter Estate subdivision. Our opposition always was with the roadways. It was brought up at one of those earlier meetings about issues with new streets, and at those meetings it was said that if there was no consideration at that time was being given to changing any of the existing street names. And here we are now with the subdivision being completed, and we're looking at changing street names. So I think under the circumstances, as previous ones have said, name the new subdivision Sunset or continue it as Wilson, but leave Wilson and the other subdivision as is. Do with Sunset what you want, but don't change the existing subdivisions as they are.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I have a comment to make.
Go ahead.
EMS, my son is a frontline worker, and he says that any emergency services would have no problem servicing these roads up here. And in phone calls I have made for ambulances coming, they always ask, what is your closest crossroad? So if I'm saying our closest crossroad is Lake Road and Gray Road 1, they're not going to go to Galloway. Hopefully they wouldn't. They also have GPS services, so they're not going to go to any of the other subdivisions if you say it's Lake Road and Gray Road 1. So EMS, I don't think that that's any concern at all with them getting addresses mixed up. Thank you. And we have Jennifer McDermott. Is she allowed to speak as well?
She hadn't previously registered, but if she'd like to make a quick comment, then please go ahead.
Thank you, Council. I very much appreciate that. I've been away, so I wasn't able to register, or else I definitely would have. I reside next door at 111 Wilson Drive, and I've purchased that property approximately 7 years ago. I purchased that property for very specific reasons. And I find that the change of this address goes against a lot of those reasons. Wilson Drive and Northbourne Park subdivision is a very unique community unto its own. And to incorporate us into the extension of Sunset Boulevard goes against everything this community and this subdivision goes for. That is an entirely different class, an entirely different driven subdivision. I can't even begin to describe the changes actually, but along with that, the cost, the inconvenience, I have EMS have to attend to me oftentimes due to medical situations, and I have never had an issue with EMS. I also concur with Sandra Lucky. I was born and raised in Kitchener-Waterloo, and for all of those years, King Street, Weber Street, numerous streets have had different geographical directions and different breakups in their street names, and that has never been an issue. As a matter of fact, the historical reasons for the names of those streets have always stood strong. I find the pursuant of this change came across awfully quickly. The timing is incredibly bad, and I almost beg you, according to Lena Gomez's comment of our 100% opposition, to not make Wilson Drive comply with this change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, our next commentator will be Jeff Clues.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, good afternoon. Name is Jeffrey Plews, and I'm the owner at 126 and 141 Wilson Drive. To give the council some concept of how long we've owned these properties, 141 has been in my family for 64 years, and I purchased 126 Wilson 21 years ago. So I have basically 4 comments. And the one is to start with the pricing of the changing of the signs. And I know that in the letter dated August the 5th, but the financial impact is suggesting that it would be minimal of $1,000. But in that, I just did some calculations myself that 77 signs at 10 minutes a sign. And of course, there's traveling time between those or among those signs as well. Comes to about a 12.8-hour day. I assume that would be 2 days of one person or 2 people traveling from the township to Wilson Drive and Sunset Boulevard and Lakeshore. So I assume that the cost would be more than the $1,000 suggested in that document. That being said, we are in a global pandemic. We have a $343 billion fiscal deficit that the federal government, obviously provincial governments are running deficit. It seems as though every municipal and city is running a deficit. So I'm not sure why you would consider spending this money, although it's not a lot of money at this time. My second point is, once again, and it's been mentioned on several occasions already, with regards to the naming of the street Wilson Drive, that Mr. Wilson, Jim, I believe his first name was, I met him as a child, was the farm owner, and to keep some of the heritage down in this area, we would appreciate the consideration of keeping Wilson Drive named after Mr. Wilson. My third point is more to the point in the letter directed on the EMS. And if you just give me a moment here, I believe that in 2001, a study done by the City of Ottawa with Consulting Emergency Services, it determined that the following categories of street names that are most problematic is 1, streets with duplicate or similar sounding names and different street type designations. Example, Hello Street or Hello Avenue. Combined with duplicate civic numbers, these can cause confusion if the 911 caller cannot appropriately identify the street type. Those are not connected to one another, but are in proximity to each other. Number 2, streets with duplicate or similar sounding names and identical street designations, i.e. Timeway spelled T-I-M-E and Timeway spelled T-Y-M-E. Number 3, streets that are physically disconnected, for example, by a park or a building or a highway or a ravine. Once it is determined that a street or streets are problematic, a decision will be made as to which street or streets from the pair or group of streets must be renamed, with a new name to eliminate the confusion. 1, the number of affected addresses in order to minimize the impact on those who will be required to change their address. 2, the historical significance, or whether the street is a major road. 3, how long the street has existed, or if the street forms a boundary with an adjacent municipality. And 4, if the street includes an identifiable landmark within the community, or if the street name contributes to existing street name through in the neighborhood, which aids in way of finding it. None of the problematic issues that were outlined in this study apply to the renaming of Wilson, Sunset, and/or Lakeshore. On January the 9th of 2007, the innovation of the iPhone or smartphone, on January the 9th of 2007, the innovation of the iPhone or smartphone was discovered. It is now possible for anyone possessing a smartphone with GPS to arrive from anywhere to any address along Wilson Drive, Sunset, or Lakeshore. I challenge all on council to take the time and see if you can locate any address along this corridor in a timely and efficient manner. I assume that our EMS has been equipped with GPS seeking devices, so there should be no problem at any time. My final summary, or my final situation, or number 4, is I propose that if there was ever a crisis, a person is pulled from the water or has a heart attack and needs medical attention. Hopefully that never happens. But someone calls EMS and perhaps is a visitor. They know the street name but do not know the street number. I suggest if the person tells the 911 operator Wilson Drive as opposed to the new Sunset Boulevard, EMS would have a much easier time to arrive at that address. In essence, shorter streets potentially saves lives. Now, it has already been discussed that many.
If I can just interrupt, you have reached your 5-minute allotment, so if I can just ask you to be concise in your comments, please.
Yes, I was just going to cite the fact that, once again, in Cambridge has a very, very long road going through Preston and through Galt. It's a continuous road named King Street, Coronation Boulevard, Dundas Street. And you know what? Council there has continued that and have not changed it to one street name. Thank you for your time and consideration, Council.
Thanks, Jeff.
Our next commentator will be Brian Kennedy.
Go ahead, Brian.
Hello, members of council, Mayor Burley, members of the press, if they're there, and ladies and gentlemen and fellow neighbors. My name is Brian Kennedy. I live at 181 Lakeshore Road. I am opposed to the street changes. Lakeshore Road is a nice small name, and it certainly suits our people that are on the street. We do not want the streets changed. There's been several letters forwarded to council from the residents on the street, and there's no reason to change the streets. You've heard numerous reasons from the residents of Wilson and Sunset, and I believe you're going to continue hearing them, and there's just no reason. The one comment I do have right now is the new street in the Boulder subdivision doesn't even line up with Sunset. It's a third of the street off. When you look down the road, if you stand in the roads don't even line up. I know you got four-way stop put on each of them, but that's your differential right there. It's a street all by itself. Everybody is good with the way we are here right now. I hope council goes down the same road as the residents. It would be greatly appreciated. We all have our, we all get Amazon and deliveries constantly, and it's just going to be a mess. I could see it being a mess for several years to come. And then we have the inconvenience and the cost. It's going to be a cost to every owner. Cost is going to be fairly minimal. The inconvenience is going to be huge. So in that regard, we are opposed here at 181 Lakeshore and support everybody else that is opposed. Thank you, council.
Thank you, Brian, for your comments.
Okay, next we have Bob Valancourt and Laura List.
Go ahead, Bob. Laura?
Nothing to say right now, thanks. It's Bob Valancourt.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And just to confirm, Miss Laura List does not have any comments either.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Laura, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm in opposition with the majority here as well. It's not just a matter of cost, it's also our time. It's a matter of standing at the driver's license and the Ministry of Transportation and driver's licenses, our titles. So for us, we hope that the council and the township makes the decision based on the 100% of signed opposition on this.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
And next we have Dolores Smith.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you for allowing us to speak our piece. We've submitted emails. There's been petitions, everything that we can think of. I guess the biggest thing is the inconvenience of having to change everything. We've been married 61 years, so we have a few things to change. During COVID, you will have to go in person to some of these places, and that's just unacceptable, especially for people our age. The EMS one is the one that just really threw me. If there was a problem, then someone was remiss in not notifying us that there was a problem. We've never heard of anything like that. I think people have covered just about every aspect of why we are opposed. There's absolutely no reason to change Lakeshore. Like Brian said, we like our little street down here. It suits us just fine. I do hope that unlike the water increases, that council will take all of our concerns under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, and I can assure you we definitely will.
And next up, we have Tom Myhill.
Yes, hello. This is Tom Myhill from 163 Lakeshore Road. I won't take too much time because I think it's been very, very well covered by all of our neighbors, particularly on the requirement from council's side as terms of EMS and the legal requirements and what other towns have, and it does not seem that there's really much of an issue for us to go all through this. I would like to, I don't know if any of the council members have ever had to go through a street address change before, but I have, and I can tell you it is a pain in the you-know-what. Anyway, I just have a very brief summary that I submitted in an email, but I'll go over it now just so council can hear this. Types of things that you're going to have to look into and are going to take a lot of effort on behalf of the people in the neighborhood. Service Ontario driver's license, health card, vehicle and plate registrations, healthcare providers, doctors, specialists, dentists, optometrists, workplace or employment office, Canada Pension Plan, Canada Customs and Revenue Agency, child tax benefit, GST rebate, income tax, utility, providers such as hydro, gas, water, etc. Community service providers such as cable, telephone, etc. Insurance companies, life, home and auto, financial institutions, all your banks, credit unions, mortgage brokers, investment firms, credit card, educational assistance, daycare, memberships, reward programs, newspapers, magazines, clubs, newsletters, etc. That, I'm sure, is not a complete list, but it gives you an idea of what is involved for us to go through with that. One other thing that there are some things that I know from us having to do it before, we've had issues with Google and with delivery by outside services, some confusion that goes on for quite a long time. One other issue I would like to make that nobody's covered as yet is I notice when we go down to the end of the road, there's a big roadblock across it and it says not assumed by municipality. Well, I can tell you, our little thing in here, we looked after our own roads for about 15 years before. It wasn't until the water got in that they decided to finally assume our road. So I'm not so sure how long it's going to take for that to happen. And we're now going to have an emergency service with a section of the road that's got a roadblock or no maintenance done to it, because I'm pretty sure it'll be a while before you people decide to plow that road for them, because I don't think they're going to have too much action or people to pay taxes there for a long time. So that's another point I would like to make. I think that about covers it for me, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Tom.
Our next commentator will be Ray Schuman.
Go ahead, Ray.
Hello. I want to thank the mayor and the council and everyone and all my neighbors for taking the time and joining us on this meeting. My wife and I, Jude, we live at 126 Sunset Boulevard. I think everything has been covered very, very well on why we should keep Wilson and why we should keep Lakeshore named as they are. I think it'll only add confusion if we call everything Sunset Boulevard, and that makes it a much longer street and a lot easier to find somebody that's in a stressful situation or an emergency situation. I think it's quite easy just to call it Wilson and just keep it as it is. The other thing I wanted to address just briefly is the financial impact. And just briefly, I just ran some numbers, and let's say I go with the impact for the township being $1,002. If I take the 77 households and multiply it by a minimum of 3 hours that it would take to make these minimum 30 changes, address changes, and I multiplied it by a really conservative hourly figure of $30 an hour. Let me just repeat that. 77 households, 3 hours minimum, and it'll take a lot more than that if Service Ontario alone. Multiply that by $30 per hour, you're looking at $6,930 additional to the figure of $7,278. So we're talking about $14,200, not just $7,000. So that is a lot of time and a lot of money that, my neighbors and I would have to put out. And I don't think that's fair, because I feel this is being kind of rushed through, number one. And number two, just imagine if we did this, made these changes, and some emergency happens, and they say, this is not good for the neighborhood. We have to break up these streets and call them all different names again. In other words, undo what we are proposing to do. And then, so now some of us are going to go through a fourth and fifth address change. Can you imagine that and the cost?
Thanks for your comments, Reed.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking the time.
Our next submission will be from Catherine O'Hagan-Todd.
Good afternoon, Council. My name's Catherine O'Hagan-Todd. I have property at 140 Wilson, so directly adjacent to the new properties, as well as at 128 Wilson. To give context, as many people have, my family were at 128 Wilson, so we've been there for about 45 years, and then my husband and I at 140 Wilson for about 25 years. So we've been very committed to the community. I think today, just coming kind of later in the cycle, you've heard many reasons why there is not a need to change the name, but mostly you've heard also the desire. So just firstly addressing that from the need around EMS, you've heard from people that have probably lived experience of having called ambulances, having to call for EMS and not having any concern or confidence about the ability to find their locations. You've heard from others that, of course, with modern technology, and I'm sure the GIS and what different types of vehicles are equipped with, we are in a technological age and even more dependent on that today, that you can easily map yourself from my location at 128 to 140 Wilson without difficulty. So this will not be a problem. The roads are, although they're maybe not perfectly aligned, they are straight. So it is possible to get from one to the other very easily, as well as actually finding those locations on whether they be Wilson, a new street that might be named, or Lakeshore. But I think what you've actually also heard is that we are compliant with the requirements for that civic address. So we are meeting those requirements, that this is not a mandatory change, and hence we're having a public meeting. But again, when people have come forward like myself and stating kind of our subdivision, Northbourne, the street that I live on, or somebody mentions we like our community, we like our name, we like Lakeshore, you're really hearing about communities. And that's what we identify with. Our street being Wilson, in some cases it has to do with the history and the location. It has to do why we bought properties where we did. We feel that our community is different than the one adjacent to us, the new one that's coming along. And taking away that street address, putting cost aside, it is actually taking away another level of our identity. And I think that's a really important issue. It's one of the problems that has existed around this new development. It's not so much about the development, it's about its impact in the communities that exist. Most municipalities are seeking to enhance those communities and that identity because it creates a level of ownership that we have. And I think you've heard that loud and clear about ownership. But again, I think the speakers ahead of me have clearly addressed any concerns, as well as even addressing those recommendations on which your staff have come forward to say this is not necessary, it's costly, it's not appropriate for the times, it's not appropriate for individuals to go through this change, and there are many options. So with that, I would just, again, restate, I'm in opposition to it. Myself, like others, we'd like to retain the Wilson Drive. We would like to retain what we have as our identity in Northbourne, and again, you're hearing that from others. The fact is, we do have no real owners yet to these new properties, and quite frankly, it seems really kind of out of order to require, I don't know, 50, 70 landowners to actually go through a name change for people that have not yet arrived yet. So please, again, this is a public consultation. I'm hopeful that you are going to listen to the feedback that's being brought forward and what's been shared with you and make the right decision. And again, I think you're hearing an overwhelming support to not make a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I can assure you that council had open ears and listened to all the comments here tonight.
Our next commentator will be Judith Schuman.
Go ahead, Judith.
Thank you, Councillor, for listening to us today, Mayor, and all of my fellow neighbors as well. I am at 126 Sunset Boulevard, and I am opposed to the change. Various concerns. First one is, I don't think it needs to happen, as everybody has stated before. We have had no problem with EMS previously. They have always been able to find us. I think it will be a confusion. I think mail drops will be an issue for everyone, and I would hate for my neighbors not to get their medication because they can't be found. It's not a good thing. There was stated in the transportation of August 27th PL 1535 report, there was an option to continue to name the new subdivision as Wilson Drive. That way, there would be no other addresses impacted. They would be a continuation of the addresses on Wilson Drive. This would not impact anybody on Sunset. It wouldn't impact the current owners on Wilson Drive. It also would not impact any of the owners on Lakeshore as well. So that is a preference of ours. I don't know whether that is something everybody else here is interested in, but we are definitely not interested in changing our address on Sunset Boulevard from 126 to 326. Also, the streets will have signs, so I don't think there's going to be any issue in terms of people getting to the streets. As people have mentioned before, we are in an electronic age. People have cell phones, GPS, EMS has GPS. I don't think that that is going to be an issue. Also, Ray, my husband, was talking about the $14,000 that he had calculated in terms of hours for us to go through and change these things. One of our neighbors had put something together for a financial impact for mail forwarding for all of us 77 residents. It costs a total of $94.52 to change your address at the post office. Each of us residents will be incurring that cost for a total of $7,278. So that's where that number came from, as well as the number that Ray mentioned in terms of the other impact. It's going to take time to change addresses at Service Canada and all of those other institutions. So there is a large impact involved for everybody, and there are homeowners that have more than one address on these streets. And I think that's it. I think someone had mentioned something about EMS and that we hadn't heard anything about this previously. I think it was Dolores, and she's absolutely right. This is the first time that we've had something come to us impacting EMS. And I believe Lena was very cohesive in her talk about the impact of EMS. It won't have any impact at all. And I hope that council will take all of these things into consideration and not change the existing numbers or road names, and either have a completely different road name for the new subdivision or just carry it through Wilson Drive and just add those 22 numbers to Wilson Drive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Judith.
And our final submission will come from Michael Ford.
Go ahead, Michael. You're muted, I believe.
Thank you, council, and thank you, neighbors. We're the owners of 147 Sunset, and we're in opposition to the proposed changes. And as our neighbors have eloquently articulated this afternoon, we as well think that it's an unnecessary cost to the municipality and its taxpayers, and an inappropriate cost to landowners, both in terms of financial and time requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Brittany?
That is the end of our submission list. I would just like to highlight that Councillor Thompson has joined the meeting as well. So if you'd like to go around for committee comments, please.
Thank you. Okay, does the committee have any comments tonight? We'll go around the table, we'll give everybody a chance. Let's start with Councillor Pringle.
Yeah, thanks to everyone that brought in their comments today. It was very well presented, so I think you did a great job of what you're asking for. As I was not a councillor in 2015 when this all started, I'm a councillor now, and I do take all your concerns very serious. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. Deputy Mayor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, yes, thank you to everybody who's made comments tonight. I went for a drive on Sunday morning just to refamiliarize myself with the situation there. And one of the first things I noticed is the different sort of character in each street. And I think I'd like to ask the county if we were to name that street a different name from all the rest that are there already, does that have an impact on EMS? Because I think it would be nice to maintain the character of the individual streets and not try to rename that new one with one of the others, but to give them their own identity as well. So my question would be to either Scott or Carolyn at the county, is there any impact on EMS if we give it a totally different name?
I think at this time, Deputy Mayor Carlson, we should give them a chance to respond to your questions with everyone else.
Mr. Mayor, Carolyn Bailey from the county has her hand raised.
Does she? Okay, go ahead, Carolyn.
Hi there, sorry. I just want to say that it makes sense if you weren't going to rename it Sunset Boulevard, that it could be Wilson Drive. It couldn't have its own new name only because we need to change names at intersections, and so it could change at Galloway, but then it becomes Wilson before it goes into Lake, I believe. So it would either have to be Wilson, or perhaps, well, that would be the best option unless everything was renamed.
Thank you, Caroline. It's just more information for thought. We'll certainly have an opportunity to bring back a proper report. I'll go to Councillor Bartlett next.
Looking at the map here, refreshing my memory, I think the residents there have very valid concerns, and I certainly appreciated to hear everyone's comments. thought that sticks out in my mind is, and I guess this question is sort of relating to the deputy mayor's question. What happens if I say, absolutely, I am not in favor of putting all the ratepayers in that area through all this? What happens then? Does the county have the power to say, you're gonna do it? That's my fear.
No, that's not correct, Councillor Bartlett, because if that won't happen.
So that you're saying that cannot happen?
So let our intern Keo comment on that first.
So when this was presented back in 2015, the county actually did give two options. One was renaming everything, and two was just renaming that portion of Bolter subdivision Wilson Drive. At the time, the Transportation Committee gave the direction that they wanted that all renamed. So that is how we're here tonight, is that staff proceeded with that recommendation. So should you choose not to rename that whole section, then the solution is exactly what Carolyn said, is that you just name that portion, the Bolter Estates Wilson Drive, and continue on the numbering.
Carol?
Thank you very much, Madam CEO. That clarifies it for me. So it sounds like the only option that's up for council is to, referring back to, I think it was Nina's comments, to extend Wilson Drive to Galloway. That's really the only option we have. Is that correct?
Or rename the whole thing as was originally recommended by Transportation. So if you don't have to proceed with renaming everything, we can just do the Bolter subdivision Wilson Drive.
Thanks, Carol. Councillor Sullivan.
Okay, use mine, I'll get it.
Oh, she goes.
Yeah.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't working there, so I slid over to side Councillor Park, but I think we can all agree that it's going to be a huge financial burden and time consuming to change addresses. I think if we can go with the easiest way, potentially name the Bolter subdivision plan Wilson Drive as well, and then just extend the remainder of those fire numbers up so there wouldn't be any financial burden or time to our current residents that are there in Wilson and Sunset as well.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Thompson, you still with us?
Still here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my apologies to everyone for being a little late tonight. Really good to hear the comments from everybody, and they are good, reasoned comments. Sometimes when we first have a look at something and we hear some rationale, you miss out on varying perspectives. So good to hear from everybody. And I think in this case, it seems clear to me that without some really compelling evidence, we should consider the extension, something that doesn't disrupt all of the existing communities and their identity. Sometimes it's easy to say, well, just change your name, but that's a pretty significant change in terms of not just the logistics, but also your identity. So I appreciate the comments.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I know we're not making decisions here tonight. It's a public meeting. I've heard all the good comments from. Oh, sorry, Councillor Colbert. I apologize. See, you shouldn't have moved.
I knew there was a reason I shouldn't be sitting down here.
I apologize. Go ahead.
No, that's okay, Mr. Mayor. I don't really have anything startling to add, other than to thank the folks from the area for coming forward tonight. I think they provide all kinds of compelling reasons why we oughtn't to follow through with the recommendation that was made in 2015. And I also concur with extending Wilson through the Bolter subdivision and not disrupting all of the rest of the folks in that area.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, not wanting to confuse things. But we're talking extending Wilson Drive. The other option could be bringing Sunset Boulevard down to that end rather than extending Wilson.
No, per Carolyn, that wasn't an option because there's an intersection there. You can't, or there's no intersection there. Or sorry, there is an intersection there. That's
It
why
has to change at an intersection. so-
right. So if you extend Sunset, then you would hit Wilson because there's no intersection there. There's no intersection between those two pieces.
Gotta be Wilson. There's no intersection.
So the existing Wilson would flow into the new Wilson at Galloway, but the other way, there's no intersection there for the change.
Yes, there is.
What they're talking about.
It goes south of Galloway. It could work both ways.
Well,
Caroline can explain that better from the county if you want her to explain that again.
Carolyn, are you able to comment on that now, or you prefer to wait?
I can comment on that. Yeah, I guess it would be best to just continue it on as Wilson to Galloway. Then the intersections, there wouldn't be a change until an intersection. So if you went to Sunset, then it would flow into the sort of the east section of Wilson that doesn't that extends past Lake. So yeah, Sunset wouldn't work.
And we'll like I say, we're not going to make that decision here tonight. And great comments. Just so everyone knows, with COVID in our council chambers, we are sitting in different areas and different seats. And I completely forgot Councilor Coburn. I did apologize for it, but very confusing. We're moving forward. My comment is very simply is that with all the comments that I've seen here tonight, I did, as the deputy mayor, did go down on the weekend and tour your neighborhood again. Excellent neighborhood. And I see no reason why there should be name change other than to extend Wilson up to what they're saying. But saying that, we're not to make decisions here tonight, we're just here as a public meeting. Clerk, Deputy, yes. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you are done remitting your comments, I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's.
We do have a couple of virtual hands that have been raised in response to committee comments. So through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to invite those members to make their comments at this point. So we'll start with Ms. Catherine O'Hagan-Todd. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the discussion, just as you take that back and consider what may be possible, technically there is not, I guess you would say, a four-way intersection, but I guess it defines what's an intersection at the end of Wilson. And if the plan is, or the best recommendation is, to do the extension to Wilson, and it is least disruptive to all the residents today, but I would ask that you do give consideration to what might be those calming, traffic calming practices that will be put onto the existing Wilson. Because as much as we talk about EMS and access, and we do think about technology and everybody with their iPhones or their Android phones to actually get to a location, and these new properties being one of them, we've already seen that increased traffic. Good example is the number of councillors, thank you, that came and actually took a look at our communities, but it did generate additional traffic. We have seen a lot of additional traffic, so once you make this into this through road, yes, it does help us to retain our identity as our community, but it's also bringing more traffic and will generate more traffic. So if I'm going to lot number 22, whatever that address will be, I guess it'll be 142 Wilson, or 144 Wilson, or 146 Wilson, or 148 Wilson, plus the odd numbers in that range, will likely drive all the traffic down Lake through our community, which, you know, that road's a smaller road. Although there's almost like a discontinuous point there right now, which in of itself, I guess, is traffic calming, but I would ask that you do give that consideration as well, as you think about what may happen as a result of that kind of extension and what is being proposed. So that has already been, I think, brought forward in other discussions about this through road. Galloway and Sunset, of course, there is an intersection there. The roads don't line up, and therefore traffic is naturally kind of brought to a halt and slowed. But this change in of itself will actually generate more more speed, more traffic, more volume. And just please keep that in mind as something that needs to be addressed as well.
Thank you, Catherine. Brittany, you have somebody else?
Yes, we just have one more, being Marge Beamer.
Go ahead, Marge.
It's actually Jen. Thank you. It's Jennifer Mcdermott again from 111 Wilson Drive. I just had a few questions after listening to everybody's comments from council. I really appreciate the positive comments in our favor. It's making me feel hopeful. What I am curious about is what the end focus is for this new subdivision. Is there to be a new name for this very specific subdivision? Is it going to be Bolter Estates, or what is the end focus there? Because will they too also want and have their own identity from Lakeshore, from Sunset, and from Wilson? Maybe the name Wilson Drive won't be desirable for this new subdivision. Regardless of name change, Catherine's comments regarding the extension of Wilson and the proposed changes, that may be required with the roadways and the traffic. Again, when everything was purchased here on Wilson Drive, often it was purchased for cottage country. Yes, we do have Maine residents, but we purchased here for quiet, for isolation, for reclusivity, all of those things. And now with the proposal of these road changes and name changes and extra traffic to accommodate this new subdivision, those are not things that we signed up for. So this is a real concern for me, and I'm sure it's a concern for everyone in our community for their various reasons. And I'd like those questions answered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have any other hands up anywhere?
Just from our county representatives.
Okay,
Scott Taylor.
I was going to go to it. Says the staff of the Township of Georgian Bluffs staff, or we can have any comments. And if we have one from Connie, who was it? Scott? Can we get Scott?
Great, thank you. Just a quick response to Ms. McDermott's comments there a minute ago. In any new subdivision across the county that we see developed, we find that the names can change, especially prior to building. So in some cases, the subdivision may be initiated by person A, and then person B or company B buys it, and they decide to change the name for marketing purposes. So, I certainly can't speak on behalf of the proponent behind Bolter Estates, but from my past experience, there's nothing to say that Bolter Estates will forever remain Bolter Estates. The other thing with respect to road naming and subdivisions, the way it works generally is if people are looking at developing new roads in their subdivisions, they might suggest a name they would like that road to be named after, but it's ultimately the decision of the township council that gets to decide upon the name. So whereas, again, if we're using the hypothetical, person A might decide to want to name a road after themselves or a family member, that decision is ultimately made by township council in that regard, and obviously that's part of what we're talking about here today. With respect to the comments about sort of traffic calming from both Ms. O'Hagan-Todd and yourself, from a county perspective, we would generally defer to the township road staff in that regard, just because ultimately it's going to be township staff that need to maintain and own those roads. We've seen in other communities, other times there can be, road furniture or obstacles put in place, but it's really something that's at the discretion of the township staff in that regard, with respect to ensuring that the through traffic isn't having deleterious effects on your subdivision in that regard.
Thank you, Scott, for your comments. Does Carolyn have any comments?
No comments, thanks.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Township Bluffs staff. Mr. Donkey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, that was great to hear from all the residents. I think it's very easy to, set a 1 to 20,000 map or a view of it and say, yeah, it's a straight line, that's reading the whole road, one name. There's some simplicities and some values with that attached. But as well as well spoken here today with the, I'll actually identify them as separate little hamlets or communities. You really get to see democracy at work here and getting that information out to the councillors to make these decisions. So I think the process is working, and yeah, look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Tyler. Are you term CEO, Cassandra? Comments?
As I stated earlier, staff presented this as was directed in 2015. We have new staff now here and we have new eyes on it. And I think after hearing all the comments back tonight from residents in council, we have a clear direction that will be taken, not tonight because this is just a public meeting, but I think we have a clear direction of what needs to happen going forward.
Thanks, Cassie. Any comments from Kirk? Okay. Well, thank you to all those who participate today. We appreciate and encourage your continued participation, feedback, and matters of council. Council will consider all matters and comments presented this afternoon and submit throughout the commenting period prior to finalizing a decision. All residents will be notified of further discussions regarding the naming. I will now call for the adjournment of this public meeting. By Councilor Sullivan, second by Councilor. There's Councilor Thompson, I see you. You have a comment?
I have a question. If I'm to stay here or go to a different place after this?
Stay.
No, you're fine, Councilor Thompson. Please stay in this meeting.
Okay. All in favor of the motion before us? It is carried. Again, thank you everybody for participating in our meeting today. I wonder if we take a 5-minute break, Madam Clerk.
Yes, I'm also in favor of that. And just for clarity for all of our public participants, all of you will be notified of any further discussions regarding the renaming or how we move forward with continuing Wilson Drive and any staff reports to that effect. So thank you again for attending. The public meeting has been adjourned.
We're not live now, really?
We're live, we're just taking a break.
You still stay live? Okay. Kathy, I didn't recognize you because you appreciate the mouse on.
Oh, don't worry about it. No worries.
We did it. We did it. That.
Oh, yeah, that was something. Yeah. At first I thought, oh no, we'll have to,
I wish I could control their meeting, but it doesn't matter Zoom or team how to do that.
Yeah, whatever's something like that.
It's reminded
oh,
I know. Oh, yeah,
Tough to work with that.
yeah, but you can't undo. So I wish I could just do it for the poll, so they didn't have to find another one.
yeah, because it's different regarding depending on what device you're using.
Yeah.
Right. Little parts that have to be done, should be on this way, right? We're down there too. Just looking to see how that one was.
Because they've been there, but not since the 70s.
No.
So what is it in the field and not this?
Well, and they talked about construction there, or whatever. I remember looking at it.
So initially, the board was going to really go toward Wilson to extend into, they wanted it to stop. And the people turning got very sick and over.
So it's really awesome. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Nice big break from the mask.
Mm.
Great, he's gonna hit me next time.
You have to get really, really close.
I know I'm soft spoken.
I don't have that trouble.
No, I don't have that problem either.
So. Great job, Brittany.
I'm glad that it went.
Awesome.
Hey, one following the other. Okay. Yeah, I think she's just trying to make her next. She's here, Brett.
My microphone just needed a woman's touch. I didn't shout right or.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that.
You're right.
I
If
pulled
it's
it
not
out.
out here, it doesn't.
I pulled it out, I must have taken it outside. Well,
Just need a clerk. Proceed. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll call the meeting back to order. With no presentations here today, no delegations, no correspondence, we're down to staff reports. The first staff report is building summary, that the August 2020 building permit summary be received for information. Someone to move, put on the floor, please. Moved by Councilor Thompson, second by Councilor Colburn. Is Tim going to speak to this?
Yeah. He's on the line if you want him to.
Okay. Any comments, Tim?
No, if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, but I think the report's pretty straightforward.
Thanks, Tim. Council, any questions? See none, all in favor of the motion? It's carried. We're down to bylaws, that the August 2020 bylaw report be received for information. Someone to move, put on the floor, please. Moved by Councilor Colburn, second by Councillor Sullivan. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Sullivan, go ahead.
I just have one question, Tim. I'm just curious if we could, like, are all these bylaw enforcement issues, have they all been resolved, or is there any that are still kind of outstanding?
Do you want me to speak to that, Your Worship?
Go ahead, Tim.
Bylaw issues are logged. If anybody has a concern about a particular bylaw issue, we can certainly tell what the status of it is at any particular time. The way that, the nature of bylaws is, whether you call them complaints or inquiries, we do log every one of them, and we do follow them through until they're signed off.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, Tim. Like, I presume that some of the smaller ones, noise complaints, animal complaints and stuff like that, I guess I'm more concerned about some of the zoning and property standard ones and dumping and grading and drainage. That was all, but thanks, Tim. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other questions from council? Seeing none, all in favor? All in favor of the motion? It's carried. Okay. We're down to next recommendation, policy COU 2022 being a policy to govern electronic participation in council committee meetings beyond an emergency period, attending as Schedule A be approved, and that regular council committee of the whole and committee of adjustment meeting shall commence at 4 o'clock effective immediately, and further that all applicable amendments to the Township Procedure Bylaw 2019-125 be presented for enactment at a future meeting of council. Someone to move, put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Barfoot, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Brittany, you can speak to this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is quite a lengthy report and a heavy policy. So I'll briefly kind of go through the highlights, and then I'm hoping that we'll have a discussion about what you would like to see out of electronic participation, if I've missed the mark, what changes you'd like to see in it, etc. So throughout this COVID pandemic, we have had to make some changes kind of on the fly in regards to how we meet. Throughout that time, everyone has been very open to electronic meetings, being yourselves, staff, as well as the public. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their flexibility. I think we've tackled it with grace, and we're moving on and improving every time we have a meeting. So thank you for that. So effective July 21st, 2020, Bill 197 received royal assent, and Bill 197 allows us to continue electronic participation beyond emergency periods. And the policy I have appended to my report details how I'm proposing to do so. So I am proposing that we do continue electronic participation beyond the lifting of our emergency declaration due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, with that being said, I am proposing that some attendance restrictions be implemented just so we can maintain a presence around the council horseshoe. So when we open the council chambers to the public again, should anyone attend in person, they're not looking at an empty horseshoe. So I am proposing that electronic participation be limited to 25% of all annual meetings. So that would include all of your committee meetings, committee of the whole, council, ITFD, committee of adjustment, and etc. Also worth highlighting, I am proposing that there always be a minimum of 3 people around the horseshoe. And again, this is just for those members of the public that choose to come in, and again, so they're not looking at an empty horseshoe. I am proposing that we leave the meetings at 4 o'clock. I know that that's kind of a separate issue, but we had amended our normal calendar to facilitate electronic meetings commencing at 4 o'clock. We did so at the June 3rd council meeting and formerly at the April 22nd meeting. I know I speak for staff when I say we have enjoyed having them at 4 o'clock. However, we had them at 7 o'clock for years, so we can accommodate moving back should council deem appropriate. So this evening, I'm looking for some direction from yourselves regarding what I have proposed for electronic participation, as well as that 4 o'clock start time. And if I may just place an asterisk, as per my report, all meetings in October will continue to commence at 4 o'clock due to the notice of public meetings from our planning department. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. Great report. Tells a lot of work put into it. I like your approach, the way you were putting them forward to council. The only part of your report that I question is the timing. And I would hope that the council members, especially the ones that are so very active out there working, could maybe comment on that time. If better time would suit you better, 5 or whatever. I just would like comment from you guys, you council members first, please. And how we start off with Councillor Thompson.
Thanks. Thanks for the report, Brittany. It's really a good report, and it's something that, after having been here for a long time, I know that the times are all relative to everyone's different perspectives. So the 7 o'clock evening meetings are sometimes easy for people to come back, but I've always thought for our poor staff, it just extends a day beyond what's reasonable. Again, my comments are not unbiased because I have a preference too. I really like the 5 o'clock meetings that we had, but that only works for me personally because it extends my day, but it lets me get there after my work day. So again, it's a selfish position of mine. So 4 o'clock is about the worst. As you know, I work in child protection, so that is right around the end of the school day and bus time. So that's probably when we get the most of our crisis and challenges are between sort of 3:15 and 4:30. So if I'm permitted to vote, like if we're looking at that, I mean, I love the 5 o'clock. The 7 o'clock was fine, except it really extended the days for people. What I find is 4 o'clock is about the worst for me because it's so close to the end of the day. I can't take a vacation, but it's at a high leverage time.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, for your comments. I'm going to go to Councillor Pringle next.
Yeah, thanks, Bernie. That's a good report. I agree 100% on everything that you've outlined there. The 25% to be at the visual meetings and stuff too is perfect. That's right on. Again, to kind of back up what Ryan said there, 4 o'clock probably is about the worst time of day for me also at my job there. I'm trying to get things figured out for tomorrow. So yeah, 7 o'clock, I don't care if we ever went back to 7. I kind of along the lines of Ryan too, 5:30. Just gives me that extra hour to get done what I got to do, and boss doesn't give me the third degree when I'm walking out the door. So again, team player, whatever works for everybody. I do feel for Brittany and stuff that have to hang around and wait for us to show up. I feel bad for them too. So I'm kind of saying 5:30 works for me. Kind of go with the flow too, but it's whatever works for everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. I'm going to go to Councillor Sutherland next.
Thank you. I always liked the 7 p.m. meetings, but I understand that for staff that travel a bit of a distance to get to work, they usually stick around the office for that extra 3 hours. So that is, or 2.5, 3 hours. That's quite a bit. I think the 5 o'clock would work perfect, to be honest with you. I think it would be really good. I would rather like 7 o'clock, but I started to like this getting home and not just climbing right into bed. So this works good.
Thank you for all those comments. I'm going to go with Councillor Colburn. Any comments?
Thank you for not forgetting about me. Appreciate it. Yeah, I thought it was an excellent report as well, and thank you for the time that went into that, Brittany. That's great. I guess if we're all speaking from an egocentric perspective, I have to say 4 o'clock works best for me. However, as others have said, I'm willing to be flexible as well. Though if I did have to choose, I would be 4 o'clock. I did have some questions about the 25% and the 3 consecutive meeting limitation. And I just wondered, is that arbitrary? Are we just, I'm just wondering where those limitations are coming from. And I wonder if we could be perhaps a little more lenient in terms of the 3 consecutive rule, because as you know, we could have 3 meetings in 1 week or more. So I'm just wondering if there's any appetite for some wiggle room there.
Thank you, Councilor Colburn. Do you want to speak to that now, Brittany, or do you want to go through everybody first?
I'll speak to it. So the attendance requirements really just came out of my wanting to have a presence in this room for when we open the chambers back up to the public. Again, I'm open to any suggestions here. This is a first stab. If we're not happy with this draft, then I'm more than happy to go back to the drawing board and see if I can incorporate some additional flexibility, if that's council's wish.
Thank you, Brittany. I wonder, Councilor Colburn, if we just let me continue on with the rest of the councilors on the time thing first, and then we'll go back to that comment. Councilor Barton?
You know, I'm sitting here and I can see the rationale behind 5 o'clock. I'll make it very clear, it doesn't matter to me, I'm available anytime. However, when I look around and I see, like Cassie, our acting CAO, has a young child in school. Brittany has a long ways to drive. I always feel bad when they have to sit around for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I think I would have to support 5 o'clock as my, I think is the best for staff and council.
Thank you, Carol. Deputy Mayor Carlton.
I'm totally flexible on the time. I can definitely see the advantage to the 5 or 5:30, and I think we need to work with the ones who are working full-time and still need to accomplish their job, but the 5 or 5:30 allows kind of the best of both for staff and for council, so I'm flexible. Makes no difference to me.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do not have a life, so 5 o'clock is fine with me, and I certainly would like to support staff and what my other council members, their comments are. I do have great concerns with them working to try and work with their schedule to make their life easier. And if 5 o'clock is going to work for them, I definitely support that. So I think we have consensus by council around the table. 5 o'clock will be the time. Now I'd like to go back to Councilor Colburn's inquiry concerning the 25%. She made a very good point. There is probably a lot of weeks I attend more than 3 meetings a week, and I'm just wondering how would be a sensible approach to that, Brittany?
So if I can make a suggestion, maybe the wording is not specific enough in that we could make it no more than 3 consecutive council meetings, or so we can make it so that if you have 3 meetings in 1 week, then you have the option to participate virtually in those 3 meetings without it counting as a consecutive meeting.
Based on council meetings versus,
correct.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Sullivan?
Yes, thank you, and kind of towards that too. Also, sometimes, I'm sure everybody's noticed that I can't make it to a meeting, and Councilor Thompson can't make it to a meeting. So is that going to count towards our 25% and or our 3 meetings in a row, just out of curiosity?
That is correct. As the policy currently stands, it would count towards your 25%. The policy does include the option for more flexibility by motion of council through an extenuating circumstance. So, for example, if anyone had a medical emergency or a family emergency or anything of that regard, it would become a discussion of council. Council would say, yes, you can participate beyond your 25% for the remainder of the year or for the next 2 months, or put a specific number on that participation. So, but to answer your question, yes, as it currently stands, that would count as towards your 25%.
And we do have that option. Cassie, go ahead.
I think it's important to note that this is a very fluid document. So whatever we try, it's not etched in stone. So if we find that something's not working for council, whether it be the 25% or the 3 consecutive council meetings, or, you know, we're frequently having extenuating circumstances, we can revise this. Brittany is kind of the leader in this, in that a lot of other municipalities haven't brought this forward to their councils yet. So I would like to keep that in mind, that we're ahead of the game, but this can be a fluid document. So I say we give it a shot with Brittany's proposed changes, and then we make changes as needed to what works for council.
Thanks, Cassie. Brittany, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to add to that, that's why I created this policy, so it's outside of our procedure bylaw, so we don't have to make amendments to our procedure bylaw every time we notice something's not working. So as Cassie said, this is very fluid. Our procedure bylaw amendments will simply note, yes, electronic participation is permitted. Yes, you do count towards quorum, and yes, you are allowed to participate in closed session meetings. That will be the extent of our procedure amendments. So whenever we need to amend this policy, we can do so without having to amend our procedure bylaw.
Thanks, Brittany. The comment in terms of that you made, Georgian Bluffs is way ahead of the game. We always are. We're leaders in the field. Thanks to our wonderful staff. And Brittany, thanks for all your effort you put in as clerk to help keep us aligned and everything. But Georgian Bluffs is always ahead of the game. So there's no, Deputy Mayor Crowe.
One other comment that I forgot to make was that at one time, I think we kept our meetings at 7 o'clock because that facilitated letting the public get here to see us. Now that we're online and live streaming all the time, that's no longer an issue. They can watch from home whenever, or they can watch later rather than right at the time. So that's another one problem.
Brittany?
And we will continue to allow people to participate like they did tonight. We will continue to provide teleconferencing and video conferencing options. So if people do want to speak to you in real time, they do have the option to do so.
Okay. Carol, go ahead.
When does the 5 o'clock meeting start?
I think November.
November? Because in this report it says,
I believe Brittany had indicated that since as a commitments, October is still doesn't go 4 o'clock.
so November?
Yes, that's correct. Due to planning circulations, we do have to wait until November. So this motion that you had read, Mr. Mayor, will require some amendments to the second line. It will be that regular council committee of the whole and committee of adjustment meetings shall commence at 5 o'clock p.m. effective November 1st, 2020.
Thank you.
Okay, so you made those amendments, Brittany?
Yep.
Mover and second are okay with amendments? Okay. If there's no other discussion on this motion before us, all in favor of the motion? Councillor Thompson? It's carried.
And just for clarity, before I take the policy back and make these changes. Oh yeah, carefully. I'm going to take it back and try and make the wording for the 3 consecutive meetings more clear, so that you do have the option to attend, for example, Committee of Adjustment on Tuesday, Council on Wednesday, and Bio on Friday, and that would not count as your consecutive meetings.
And Brittany, will you bring that back for council just for information, just so we can look at it?
Correct. So it is my intention to have these procedure amendments for your consideration. I was hopeful for next week, but I'm going to be honest, it might not be next week. It might be October. So when I bring those procedural amendments for you guys, I will also outline the policy as it stands.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our agenda. Our next recommendation is that the existing agenda review process, including weekly review assessments, be discontinued, and The staff are hereby directed to implement the proposed amendments to the agenda criteria and publication process, including weekly management team meetings and pre-meeting preparations. Someone to move put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colbert, second by Councillor Barfoot. And are you going to speak to this?
Yeah, I can give a brief outline. So further to my report, agenda review was commenced in 2018. Simply to, in the former term of council, my predecessor and I noticed that there was a lot of additions to the agenda at meetings in real time. And this was a measure taken to try and get away from last minute additions to the agenda, just to ensure transparency to the public and what have you. So at this time, it was initiated by our former CAO, but I know that Cassandra and myself are in agreement that we do move forward with amending our current processes in that we move forward with our weekly management team meetings, which has open communication amongst staff, so it has removed the need for agenda review in that regard, as well as continuing to sit down with the mayor prior to each meeting just to go over procedural advice. So in that way, all of council and the public is receiving the agenda on Fridays. As you have noticed, near the end of my report, I am proposing a tiered publication of the agenda so that council will receive the agenda a couple hours prior to it being public. So if you have specific questions, you can reach out to staff just in case the media should contact you upon publication. That way you have the information that you need. So I'm open to discussion. You may answer questions.
Thank you, Brittany. The floor is open to council. I see no hands or Councillor Sutherland.
I understand the part at the end about giving us a couple hours ahead of time. I don't always read them as soon as I get them. Sometimes it's not so Monday or Tuesday, so I do appreciate the phone call. Sorry.
Thank you, Paul, for the comments. Councillor Colbert.
I just wanted to thank staff for bringing this new policy forward and for recommending a change in how we do business. I think it speaks to your commitment to ensure that our council meetings are as transparent and open as they can be. It also speaks to your commitment to having all of council receive the information directly from the department heads and our CAO without some members of council seeing it before others. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate it.
Okay, I see no other comments from council. There's no other discussion. All in favor of the motion before us. Councillor Thompson? You for or against it?
Sorry, I thought you were asking for comments. I'm for.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to wake you up. Okay, moving on our agenda, we're down to operations. First recommendation is that the August 2020 facility report be received for information. Someone to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Sullivan. Is there any discussion of the motion, or is Zach comment here? Zach, are you here? There you are. Any comments?
No comments really. Sort of some same information as previous facility reports. I am happy to say that it looks like we're going to be moving forward cautiously with some rentals. So hopefully we see some changes in these numbers next meeting. The ice is being prepped and ready to rent out. So as I said, we're moving forward cautiously, making sure staff are ready and our renters here are prepared to come in and start using the facilities again.
Thanks, Zach. Any questions of council? See none, all in favor of the motion before us. It is carried. Moving on for agenda. Our next recommendation is that tender 2020-10 for tree removal clearing services to widen Francis Lake Road be awarded to Canadian Woodland Contractors Incorporated at a price of $37,840 plus HST, as specified in option B in tender documents. Someone move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councilor Barfoot, second by Councilor Pringle. Tyler, do you want to speak to the report?
Thank you, Mayor Burley. Once again, this report as an existing report as follows. So in 2019, there's OPS 2019-61, and this is Francis Drive residents that petitioned the council to assume the maintenance of the road. In the resolution, the operations committee, it was to maintain this road at the end of summer 2020. If I may just take a step back just so we can all understand what exactly we're talking about. I remember last time we brought up Francis Lake for discussion here. It gets complicated because we actually have two of them in two different segments here. So I just want to bring up this key map. So the portion that we're actually talking about today is Francis Drive. So this is the Francis Drive Cottage Association. They have their own association. Previously, they paid their own membership to do the maintenance and the snow clearing and removals and such. So if you work further to the north, you'll see a red line there. And that's actually a 1 foot reserve that we've been in the process of trying to acquire for almost a year now. Unfortunately, the owner of that 1 foot reserve has passed away, and it's now in the estate. It's complicated our issues moving forward here. Rick, can you still up on that? Thank you. So then just to separate the two, so that red line is basically the dividing line here. And then we get into what we consider Big Rock Road, or it's actually a site plan agreement. And this is with Smart McKinnon and a numbered company for Spencer Avenue and Francis Drive. So I just want to differentiate for council and to say that yes, there's two ongoing road assumptions going on here, but just to dictate before I get really into the description.
Sir, before you leave that screen, Tyler, I wonder, could you go to the screen without touching it and show us on the McKinnon Smart section where would the actual plow run to plow the road? I know it's on the road, but just so there's no confusion where they'd actually go, because we're probably going to assume that for winter maintenance.
Yes, sir. So it's going to lead into my next topic, but I'll definitely show you that now. So this is off of Grand Road 17, and it'll be coming in here.
That used to be the former Big Rock Drive?
It's actually going to remain Big Rock Road.
Okay.
And then this is actually Francis Drive as well. So we will be looping up back and through, and then back up the subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
So again, my apologies that I'm actually trying to avoid confusion because they are two separate issues, but what operations is trying to do is connect these two road systems up. So with that land parcel in place, that red line there, what we've done in our RFP, we've been waiting very patiently to acquire this land because it's holding us up. So we sent in an RFP, or T rather, to complete the works as shown in yellow on that plan. We met the contractors on site. As a mandatory site meeting, the contractors basically came back and said, well, you know, if you can, it'll actually be cheaper in a lot of senses if you are going to do the entire thing. That will allow their traffic control plans, shutting off the road, as well as hauling material in and out of site. So what we did is we sent them an addendum to allow for an option B. So the option B, again, a separate price, actually carries the entire thing through on the assumption that we will be getting this land within the next, month or 2 weeks rather. It is a complicated issue, so I have no problem answering questions on that, but I'll just proceed for now unless some people have some others. The bidders, we actually ended up getting 7 bidders come back on this, which is excellent. I was surprised. There's actually 9 bidders that showed up on site for the mandatory site meeting. Very wide variance in the bids themselves. I requested the 2 lowest bidders give us references so we could follow up to their following workmanship, and they both came back very positive. So again, they're both considered to be competent employees or competent contractors, and that's basically what's driving the our selection process. Is we've done our due diligence to check out the references, and it seems like the lowest bidder in this option is our best case scenario. When it comes to the financial aspect, we budgeted $30,000 on this item from the 2020 capital budget. That was for the tree removal. The cost of this is actually $37,840, and what we're going to do is trying to take the remainder of that from the road reserves. There's also another small, not really small, but it's a conflict that this contract is actually waiting on as well, and that is Hydro 1. So again, part of the mandatory site meeting, it was contractor questions and Hydro 1 clearance. So that's a main issue with this road is that the hydro lines are not maintained at all, if you ask me. So to get our contractor in there, Hydro 1 has to go in there first to clear a 10-foot section around the hydro lines before we can really proceed. So again, the intention of this report, especially coming to the committee as a whole, is to give you all information, as this is going to be time sensitive, and of course this will be coming through council next week. Is just to give you the appropriate information, and a lot of you do ask questions that you may have.
Thanks, Tyler. I have a question before I go to council. In this process with this contractor cutting down trees and so on, does the wood stay for the property owners, or does they take it off site, or I'm scared? I don't have the tender documents, I don't know.
Yeah, no, so the contract's written that they are to dispose of all the material, but atypically in these contracts, you're absolutely right, a resident will come in and say, I need wood, or would like the wood, and that's outside of the scope of this contract, but they have the ability to leave that there for them if they wish. That's a cost savings to the contractor.
Okay. Council, any questions? Councilor Barfoot.
I just have a couple of concerns. Having done real estate on Bass Lake side, I found that Ontario Hydro took the path of least resistance, not the property lines where they should be. One concern I have is, because the properties back there not necessarily have survey stakes on them, how many problems are we going to run into with this company going in, cutting trees, possibly on private property? And my next concern is, in the past, we have had problems with contractors, not this company, but leaving the road in a less than desirable condition, where contractors have gone in, hauled logs out, get their big equipment in there. I think in the past we've taken a deposit, haven't we, Mr. Mayor, from contractor loggers?
Yes.
Pardon? For loggers, yes. Yeah, a logger's deposit on this. I'm just concerned about the road after the fact.
Tyler, go ahead. It's probably the tender documents, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and again, Councilor Barfoot, excellent questions. For the first one, for the private property, we've had to write this in such a way that says that the contractor has to go in there and flag 6 meters on either side of the center line of the road. With that being done, we're then going to be township staff will be going out there to actually verify the locations of the trees before cutting. So in that, I should also say that back in the assumption period with the petition to council, it was actually the association that said that they were going to flag their own property lines for us. I know we're still missing some, and it will be our responsibility to catch these before we are taking them down, but that's the procedure that we've taken in this. It's actually in the addendum and ensuring that they will mark the trees, but then we're going to verify them before they're actually cut. Your second question, again, a great one on the damage to the road or the quality of the road. Atypically, that's a big driving cost and a worry. We've again written that in the contract, not as a deposit, but as a consideration, as this is the first step of our road assumption process. So we're going to be clearing the trees as part of this contract. We're going to be going through and actually grubbing the stumps. And then we're gonna be widening the road, as mentioned in the original report there too. I think it's a 5-meter platform. So we worded it in such a way to say minimal damage is okay, because we're coming right behind it with reconstruction, if you will. But it's again stipulated that anything major that we can't take on, then we can be responsible for remediation. So hopefully that answers your question. Thanks, Heather.
So we don't require laws for property.
Madam Clerk, I need to ask you a question. On report 2019-61, Francis Drive request for assumption moved by, and it says it's moved by Mayor Burley. I just wonder, I don't understand that. I didn't think I'd move anything.
So just to be correct, you're speaking of the appended report to the report that you're considering right now. So that would be report appended to OPS 2020-39.
I'm looking at report 2020-099.
If I may, Brittany.
Bear with me.
I think it's actually in the, is this like in the my report now, the 39, and then I think it's a copy and paste there. I actually pulled that from the actual minutes. So in our minutes, they would say that it was moved by you during the minutes. So I think that's an error in my report.
It's just that's a mayor. I don't really move anything.
Mr. Mayor, were you a member of the committee at that time? And as a member of the committee, you would have made motion?
But I wouldn't be. I was not mayor at the time, so I would not have moved it as Mayor Burley. Cassie?
As it does not affect proceedings tonight, can you let us look into that?
Well, Melanie, I just don't want to let record it the way it is. I don't think it's correct. Go ahead, Brittany.
So yes, we can look into it further, but you would have been mayor on June 10th, 2019, because your term commenced in 2018. So as this was adopted by the operations committee, you would have the opportunity to move and second motions. I believe Councillor Sutherland was the chair at that time.
Okay. Okay. All right. Please check into it, but I understand now. Okay. This Councilor Brinkle.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Good report there, Tyler. Just one thing I realized here when I'm sitting there looking at the quotes that we got on this, and I'm in the wrong business, so I don't know how anybody can go from 34,000 to 262,000 or 273 for the same job. So I just my next curious question would be the Canadian Woodland contractors. Are they local or where are they from?
That's a great question. I can't answer that off. They're definitely within an hour drive, I can tell you that. And for their references, I can mention that they referenced ACON. So that's basically the heating gas up here for doing the gas lines. Now that is a lot more bushwhacking, if you will, in open fields. But there was another contractor that that I called up and talked to. There was actually a reconstruction contractor based out of Cambridge. So again, that's a lot more sensitive work and somebody, a contractor that we're looking for that can deal with more of, although this is not urban environment, but hopefully you can see where I'm going with this with reconstruction and the sensitivities that come with it. I will have to see exactly what you guys are talking about.
I just kind of hope they are fairly local or whatever, or it's more local than, I see we got 6 Nations down there and a few others there. It's nice to have somebody closer, and if they're, that's good. I just, observation that those are some crazy numbers.
Tyler, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I absolutely agree. I was set back as well. And even when the 9 contractors showed up to site and they were telling me where they were coming from, like they were all 2-3 hours away. And I was just, I couldn't believe the response we got for this actual RFP. I think some of those are reflective of the cost. Those bigger companies, they just have estimators or quotation guides as well. So I'm sure a lot of others included in the localization. So it's going moving.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Carlson.
I guess my question is somewhat on the line of what Grant was saying. I questioned that huge difference in dollars, and I wondered if the Canadian Woodland contractors were actually looking to have product out of that they could then resell, which would then be part of their income as well. And if we're asking them to leave that for any residents along that road that want it, is that going to change what they're willing to do the job for?
Tyler? You answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Burley. Again, it's not the intent, the contract is actually written in such a way that, the contractor will dispose of everything on site, and that includes wood chips even. Sorry, my point previous to that, to, Mr. Burley is, he's been in, Mayor Burley, I've been in the contracting business before, is that, you often get requests for that wood while you're out there and they see them down. So again, for campfire wood so I think that possibility is real, and I just want to mention that, that whatever the contractor makes an agreement with a resident there, that's outside of our scope, but it could be beneficial to the contractor. But I agree that there's a lot of mature trees there worth some money.
Okay. Seeing no other questions from council, I do not see Councillor Thompson, so I take it there's no other questions. Councillor Berkman?
This is a question in a roundabout way. Every 5 years, we put out for quotes for electricians, plumbers, tree removal. I noticed Redmond didn't put a tender in on this, or a price bid in on this. And just wondering, are we still doing the every 5 years and getting quotes? And how does this, like Redmond, and hey, you got a good price, that's okay. But I'm just concerned when we went outside of our policy on this.
Cassie?
So yes, we do still maintain that list, and it's actually coming due to do again. This is outside of the scope of that list because of the dollar value of the overall project. So that list is more for like your smaller repairs, you know, under the $5,000 that you don't want to have to get pre-approved to do, or in that, like even that 5 to 10 range. Because of this dollar value, we needed to go out for an RFT. Redmond's had an opportunity to bid, they chose not to.
Thank you.
Okay, Tyler?
Just for a small, they did show up to a mandatory site meeting and they took some interest in it, but obviously they didn't meet their timelines this year. There's one that they were with it in the mandatory meeting.
Thank you, Tyler. Seeing no other questions or any comments on the motion before us, all in favor of the motion before us? And I see Councillor Thompson is not there. Mr. Van Kirk. Okay, it was carried. So we're moving on with the agenda. We're down to finance. I have a recommendation that the updated financial report be received for information. Someone's a move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colbert, second by Councillor Pringle. Cassie, any comments? None? Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion? Is carried. Our next recommendation that the updated tax arrears analysis be received for information. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Sullivan, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion? It's carried. We're down to public question period. Madam Clerk, was there any questions from the public?
No, there was not.
Thank you. We're down to unfinished business. None. New business? None. No notice of motions? Seeing none, we are down to our closed session. That the Council of Township of Georgian Bluffs move to the closed session at 6:11 with the interim CEO and acting clerk remaining in the room to discuss persistent plan, procedure, criteria, or instructions to apply to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, airport commercial leases. Someone to move the motion, please. Moved by Councillor Sullivan, second by Councillor Barfoot. There's no discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion? It's carried. We are now in closed session, and Madam Clerk, Councillor Thompson doesn't appear to be there.
you in the most sportsmanlike award in my home? Do well. I guess I'm just used to.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we are now live. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We only went in camera to discuss what we did in camera for, nothing more. I see we no more business here tonight, so I look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Deputy Mayor Carlson. All in favor of the motion to adjourn? It's carried. We are now adjourned. Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Was it